Baron Trump, one of Hollywood's most admired actors, entered a luxury car dealership unnoticed. To him, it was just another day. But what was about to unfold would change everything. And when the truth about him emerged, the outcome wouldn't just be surprising. It would be unforgettable. Before we dive into the story, let us know where you're watching from. And if you enjoy stories like this, be sure to like and subscribe. There's another exciting one coming your way tomorrow. The morning sun bathed Los Angeles in a golden glow, casting long shadows along the bustling streets. The city, always alive with energy, moved to its own rhythm. Cars honked in the distance, street vendors called out their morning specials, and pedestrians hurried along sidewalks, lost in their own worlds. Amid the familiar chaos, a lone figure walked with quiet confidence, his presence unassuming yet oddly magnetic. Baron, dressed in an old shirt and faded jeans, moved with the ease of a man who had never let fame define him. There were no bodyguards, no entourage, just him and the city he had called home for decades. A few people recognized him as he passed. A barista behind a cafe window, a teenager waiting for the bus, an older woman walking her dog. Each time, Baron acknowledged them with a small nod or a friendly wave. He had always been this way. No matter how many blockbusters bore his name, no matter how much admiration he received, he remained the same. Humble, kind, uninterested in the superficial trappings of celebrity life. He turned into a small cafe he had frequented for years. The scent of freshly ground coffee and warm pastries greeted him as he stepped inside. "Good morning, Oliver," he said, offering a small smile to the man behind the counter. Oliver, a tall man with a warm demeanor, grinned back. "The usual?" "The usual, please." As the espresso machine hummed to life, Baron leaned against the counter, his thoughts drifting. Lately, an idea had been occupying his mind, something that blended his love for classic cars with a deeper purpose. He had always admired vehicles not just as machines, but as pieces of history, works of art that told stories. But this wasn't just about adding another car to a collection. He wanted to do something meaningful with it. Maybe restore it and auction it for charity, or perhaps donate it to someone who would cherish it. The possibilities stirred his imagination. As Oliver slid the coffee across the counter, he asked, "Something like that?" while studying the look in Baron's eyes. Baron wrapped his fingers around the warm cup and replied, "Well, whatever it is, I'm sure it'll be something good. You always have a way of turning things into something bigger than yourself." Baron chuckled softly. "We all try." He took a sip, savoring the rich bitterness, before stepping back toward the door. "See you next time, Oliver." "You bet, man. Take care." Back on the street, Baron felt the weight of his decision settle in his chest. Today was the day he would find the car he had been searching for. There was a dealership he had heard about, one that specialized in rare and luxurious models, and that was where he was headed. As he walked, he thought about the nature of luxury. To some, it was wealth, power, exclusivity. But to him, real luxury was something else entirely. It was simplicity, kindness, the ability to walk the streets without pretense, knowing who you were with or without money, with or without status. The dealership loomed ahead, a sleek glass building reflecting the morning sky. Inside, he knew, would be a world vastly different from the one he lived in. A world where money spoke first and appearances mattered above all else. Still, he walked in with the same quiet confidence, unaware that this ordinary day was about to become unforgettable. The moment Baron stepped through the glass doors of the dealership, he felt a shift in the atmosphere. Inside, the space exuded quiet opulence. Gleaming marble floors reflected the soft glow of overhead lighting, while sleek, polished cars stood like sculptures under spotlights. The air smelled of new leather and the faint, sterile scent of expensive cologne. Every detail, from the pristine carpets to the well-dressed employees moving through the showroom, was designed to remind customers that they were in a place meant for the elite. Baron walked in without hesitation, his eyes scanning the room. He wasn't there to browse. He had something specific in mind. For a moment, it seemed as though no one noticed him. The salespeople were engaged in conversations with other clients, clad in designer suits and expensive jewelry. But then, gradually, heads began to turn. Whispers rippled through the showroom like a slow-moving current. "Is that one?" one employee murmured. "No way," another replied. A few customers took brief glances, then returned to their business. It was the employees who seemed the most perplexed. Something about the man who had just entered didn't fit the usual clientele. Baron, in his faded jeans and worn leather jacket, walked past luxury cars that cost more than most houses, but he wasn't there to impress anyone. He was there for a car, one he had been searching for, and there it was, at the far end of the showroom. Nearly tucked away from the flashier models, a rare vintage car. Its curves were elegant, its design timeless, a vehicle from another era, restored to perfection. Baron's fingers twitched slightly, as if he could already feel the smooth metal beneath his touch. He stepped closer, drawn to it. "Excuse me," he said calmly, stopping near a salesman who was leaning against a pillar and scrolling through his phone. "Could you tell me more about this model?" The salesman barely looked up. "Hang on, I'll get someone," he muttered before turning and walking away without another glance. Baron watched him go, his face unreadable. He didn't react, not yet. Instead, he shifted his gaze back to the car, letting his fingertips brush against the edge of the hood. Behind him, quiet murmurs continued. "Does he even know where he is?" one voice whispered. "Doesn't look like he's buying anything," another replied with a quiet chuckle. Baron heard them. He always did. Years in Hollywood had trained him to catch even the softest conversations in a crowded room. But he had also learned something far more important: how to ignore them. He remained where he was, waiting. Minutes passed. No one came. His patience, though vast, was not endless. He glanced around the showroom, catching sight of a man walking toward him with a stiff posture and an appraising look, the manager. Dressed in a tailored suit, his expression was carefully composed, yet there was something behind his eyes, a flicker of doubt, perhaps even irritation. He came to a stop just in front of Baron, glancing briefly at the car before shifting his attention to the man beside it. "This model is exclusive," the manager said, his tone polite yet cool. "Very rare." "That's exactly what I'm looking for," Baron replied with a nod. The manager's gaze swept over him from head to toe, with no attempt to disguise his assessment. "Well," he said, crossing his arms, "I hope you're ready. This car isn't for just anyone." For the first time, Baron's expression shifted slightly, a flicker of something behind his calm gaze. He said nothing. He simply smiled, a small, almost imperceptible smile, but his eyes did not waver. Baron held the manager's gaze, his face calm and unreadable. He had encountered people like this before, those who measured a person's worth not by their actions, but by the labels on their clothes and the weight of their wallets. He had always found it amusing, in a sad sort of way. The manager, however, was not amused. He shifted his stance, crossing his arms, waiting for Baron to react. When none came, he smirked slightly, as if he had already made his judgment. "Are you seriously interested in this model?" the manager asked, his tone edging on condescending. Baron tilted his head slightly. "Yes," he said simply. The manager raised an eyebrow. "I don't mean to be rude, but you do realize this car costs more than some homes in Beverly Hills?" Baron nodded. "Once I do." The manager exhaled his smirk, widening. "It's not just about the price," he continued. "A vehicle like this isn't for just anyone. It requires a certain level of appreciation, a certain kind of clientele." Baron remained silent for a moment, his gaze unwavering. Then, in the same calm voice, he asked, "And what kind of clientele is that?" The manager hesitated, realizing he had walked into a corner. But instead of backtracking, he doubled down. "People who understand what they're buying," he said, lowering his voice slightly, as if sharing a secret. "People, how do I put this, fit the profile?" Baron's fingers grazed the hood of the car again, but his focus remained on the man before him. "And you decided I don't fit the profile because of what? My jacket?" The manager let out a short chuckle. "Let's just say experience tells me when someone is here to buy and when someone is here to look." Baron took a slow breath, suppressing the flicker of irritation creeping into his chest. Not because he was insulted. He had long ago stopped caring about the opinions of men like this, but because this moment was bigger than him. It was about the assumption, the silent but ever-present expectation that only certain people deserved respect, that only certain people belonged in places like this. "You know," Baron said finally, his voice even, "it's interesting. You seem to know a lot about people just by what they wear." The manager's smirk faltered slightly. "Baron, you must be really talented, judging people at first glance like that," he added. The manager's jaw tightened. He wasn't used to being challenged, especially not by someone he had already dismissed as unimportant. "Look," the manager said, his voice sharpening, I don't mean any offense, but we get all kinds of people in here. Some just want to take pictures, some just want to sit in the cars and pretend. We can't waste our time on dreamers. Baron nodded slowly, as if absorbing the words. Dreamers, he repeated. The manager took this as an opportunity to regain control of the conversation. He straightened his posture, giving Baron another quick once-over. That's right, he said. And I've seen enough to know when someone is serious and when someone isn't. Baron exhaled softly for a brief moment. He considered simply walking away. He had no interest in proving himself to anyone. But something about this moment, the way the employees watched from the corners of the showroom, the way customers stole glances waiting to see how it would unfold, made him stay. He smiled slowly and knowingly. And what if I'm not here to dream? The manager scoffed, shaking his head. Then I'd say you're in the wrong place. Baron's smile didn't waver. Funny, he said. I was just about to say the same thing. The words hung between them, the weight of their meaning sinking in around them. The quiet murmurs in the showroom ceased, as if even the walls were holding their breath. The battle of perceptions had begun, and Baron had no intention of backing down. The tension in the showroom was thick, pressing in like an unseen force. Employees pretended to be busy, but their eyes darted toward the confrontation, and customers shuffled uncomfortably, uncertain whether to keep watching or look away. Baron remained still, his expression unreadable, while the manager, Richard, now fully aware of the audience forming around them, straightened his shoulders in an attempt to reassert control. Listen, Richard, he said, his voice carrying a forced patience. I don't know what kind of game you think you're playing, but I don't have time for this. Baron tilted his head slightly. A game, he echoed, his voice calm. Richard exhaled sharply, rolling his eyes as if this conversation were beneath him. People like you come in here all the time, he said, his tone dripping with irritation. You walk around, admire the cars, maybe take a few pictures, and then leave. If you're here to play pretend, I'd appreciate it if you didn't waste my time or my team's time. Baron's jaw tightened, but his voice remained level. And what if I'm not here to pretend? Richard let out a short, disbelieving laugh. Then I'd say you're in the wrong place, he said for the second time that day. This place is for serious buyers, people who can afford to be here, people who have something to prove. Baron didn't flinch. Instead, he studied Richard for a long moment, as if weighing the kind of person he was dealing with. That's an interesting philosophy, he said finally. So, in your mind, the only people worth your time are the ones trying to prove something? Richard crossed his arms. People who have earned the right to be here, he corrected. Not just anyone can walk in and expect to be taken seriously. Baron's lips pressed together, a flicker of something unreadable passing through his gaze. Then he spoke, his voice lower but steady. You know, I've met a lot of people in my life, some with billions of dollars, some with barely enough to get by. And the funny thing is, the ones who have nothing to prove are usually the ones who deserve the most respect. Richard's smirk faltered for the first time. Something resembling doubt flickered in his expression, but it was gone as quickly as it came. That's a nice sentiment, he said, his voice sharp again. But this isn't about philosophy, it's about business, and my business is making sure we focus on real buyers. Baron took a slow breath, shaking his head slightly. You know, respect doesn't cost anything, he said, and yet somehow it seems harder to find here than any car in the showroom. That was when Richard snapped, his face darkened, his composure cracking. He took a step closer, his voice dropping to a near growl. Listen here, buddy. But before he could finish his sentence, his temper got the best of him. His hand twitched, and in a split second his fist lifted slightly, a rash movement more out of frustration than intent. He never got the chance to follow through. Baron moved instinctively. His years of training kicked in with effortless precision. He caught Richard's wrist midair, stopping the motion before it could escalate into something worse. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. The room fell deathly silent. The employees who had been eavesdropping now stared in stunned disbelief, and customers who had been pretending not to listen were suddenly watching with wide eyes. Richard's face drained of color. He hadn't expected resistance, hadn't expected his movement to be stopped so easily, so effortlessly. He tried to pull his arm back, but Baron's grip was firm, though not aggressive. It was a gesture of restraint, not retaliation. Baron's eyes met his steadily and unwaveringly. The anger you're feeling right now, Baron said, has nothing to do with me. Maybe it's time to look inward and figure that out before you take it out on others. Then, just as smoothly as he had caught it, Barron let go of Richard's wrist. Richard stumbled back, his breath unsteady, his face a mixture of shock and humiliation. He had lost control, and worse, everyone had seen it. Barron adjusted his jacket and stepped back, giving Richard space. He didn't gloat. He didn't smirk. He simply let the moment settle, the weight of what had just happened sinking into the air around them. Across the room, a young man holding his phone nervously at his side had recorded everything. Barron glanced at him. Their eyes met for a brief second, and the young man gave a small, uncertain nod. Barron responded with the faintest of smiles before turning toward the exit. He didn't need to say anything more. He had already said enough. By the time the sun rose over Los Angeles the next morning, the world already knew. The video taken inside the dealership had made its way onto social media. Within hours, it spread like wildfire, passed from one user to another, shared across platforms, dissected in comment sections, and reposted by celebrities, influencers, and news outlets alike. It wasn't just the fact that Barron Trump had been treated poorly, it was how he had handled it. The video captured everything: the condescending remarks, the dismissive attitude, the outright disrespect. But the moment that sent the internet into a frenzy was clear. The instant Richard, the manager, lost control and lifted his fist, only for Barron to stop him with effortless composure. Respect doesn't cost a thing, but it seems rarer than any car in this showroom. That one line, spoken with calm finality, became the defining quote of the moment. It appeared in headlines, in tweets, in countless captions under the viral clip. The internet had made its judgment. How do you treat Barron Trump like this? The man is literally one of the kindest people alive. If this is how they treat someone like him, imagine how they treat the average person. That manager deserved everything coming to him. The dealership's social media pages were instantly flooded with backlash. Comments poured in demanding accountability, and reviews tanked overnight, dropping the business to a 1-star rating. Within hours, the fallout was swift. News articles ran with headlines like "Arrogance and Assumptions," how one luxury dealership's mistake became a viral lesson in respect. Employees from the dealership, fearing for their jobs, began speaking out anonymously. One statement from a former worker sealed Richard's fate. He always treated people like that. It didn't matter who they were. He thought he was better than everyone. It only fueled the fire. Under immense pressure, the dealership released a formal statement, calling the incident a misunderstanding and claiming that Richard's behavior was not representative of their values. But it was too late. The public had already decided. Richard himself tried to justify his actions, giving a hollow apology in a brief interview. "I didn't recognize Mr. Trump at the time," he said. "Had I known, I obviously would have treated him differently." That single sentence sealed his fate. The world didn't want to hear that Barron Trump deserved respect because of who he was. They wanted to hear that everyone did. By the end of the day, Richard was fired. But while the world raged, Barron remained silent. No statements, no interviews, because for him, it was never about revenge. It was about something much bigger. The glass doors of the dealership swung open, and silence fell over the showroom. Barron Trump had returned. Unlike the last time, there was no confusion about who he was. Everyone in the building, employees, managers, even a few remaining customers, knew exactly why he was there. Richard was gone. His arrogant smirk and condescending attitude had been replaced by an atmosphere of unease. The dealership, once thriving, was now eerily quiet. The fallout from the viral video had been brutal. Sales plummeted, clients walked away, and the company's name became synonymous with prejudice and elitism. Barron walked through the space with the same quiet confidence as before, his eyes sweeping the room until they landed on the car, the one he had come for, the one that had started it all. It was still there, gleaming under the showroom lights. A nervous-looking employee hesitantly approached Mr. Trump. We deeply regret, Barron." He raised a hand slightly, stopping the apology before it could begin. He wasn't there for that. Instead, he turned, and his gaze landed on the new manager, a middle-aged man who stood awkwardly near the counter, shifting uncomfortably under Barron's stare. "You wanted to start over?" Barron said simply, his voice not angry, not cold, just measured. The manager swallowed hard. "Yes, we truly regret what happened, Mr. Trump, and we understand." If Barron shook his head. "This isn't about me," he interrupted. The manager blinked. "I'm sorry." Barron took a step closer, his voice calm but firm. "The problem isn't how you treated me, it's how you treat people. The words cut through the room like a blade. Employees looked at each other, the truth of that statement hanging heavy in the air. You don't just decide who deserves respect based on their clothes or their bank account, Barron continued. That's not luxury. That's insecurity. The manager had no response. There was nothing to say. Barron exhaled and turned back to the car, running his fingers lightly over the hood. I was ready to buy this, he admitted, but I won't. A hushed silence followed. The new manager's face paled. Barron took a step back, glancing around the showroom. One last time. Respect shouldn't be reserved for the people you think are worth it. It should be for everyone. And with that, he turned and walked out. The glass doors closed behind him, leaving the dealership and its employees drowning in the weight of his words. That day, Barron Trump didn't just refuse a car. He left behind a lesson that money couldn't buy. Barron stepped onto the sidewalk, leaving behind the cold, sterile air of the dealership. The sun was beginning to set, casting golden hues over the city, and with every step he took, the weight of the moment lifted. He had made his point, not with anger, not with retaliation, but with quiet certainty. He wasn't looking for an apology. He wasn't looking to humiliate anyone. He just wanted to remind people that respect was the rarest luxury of all. But he still needed to find the car, not just any car, the right car, the one that had sparked something in him when he first laid eyes on it. He hadn't come this far to give up. A few days later, he found himself in a different part of town, standing outside a much smaller, more unassuming dealership. The glass windows weren't pristine, and the lot didn't have the same intimidating gleam of exclusivity, but there was something better here, something real. When he walked through the door, he was greeted with a warm, genuine smile. Welcome. How can I help you today? The man who spoke wasn't dressed in a designer's suit. His shirt was simple, his sleeves rolled up from a long day's work, and his name tag read Sam. Barron nodded, returning the smile. I'm looking for something special. Sam's eyes lit up. Well, you came to the right place. What kind of car are you looking for? Barron hesitated, then glanced around. It wasn't a showroom filled with luxury sports cars or multi-million-dollar antiques, but there was something different about the energy here. It wasn't about wealth. It was about passion. He spotted a car in the corner. It wasn't as polished as the one in the first dealership, but there was character in it, a history waiting to be honored. That one, Barron said, pointing. Sam followed his gaze, then grinned. Ah, good choice. Classic, reliable, needs a little work, but with the right hands it could be something really special. Barron stepped closer, running his fingers along the hood just as he had before, but this time the moment was untainted by judgment or arrogance. It was just him and the car. I'll take it, he said simply. Sam blinked, surprised. You don't want to hear the details? Take it for a spin. Barron shook his head. I already know. It's the one. They shook hands, sealing the deal. Before he left, Barron posed for a photo with Sam and his team, standing proudly beside the car. Later that day, he posted it online with a simple but powerful caption. True luxury is being treated with respect. Thank you for reminding me of that. The internet erupted again, but this time it wasn't an outrage, it was a celebration. People flocked to Sam's dealership, eager to support a business that valued people over profits. The story took on a life of its own, sparking discussions about how customers should be treated, how businesses should operate, and how wealth should never determine worth. The hashtag #JoshuaRespectIsLuxury took on a deeper meaning as people shared their own experiences, stories of discrimination, of being judged by their appearances, of fighting for dignity in places that should have welcomed them. It wasn't just about a car anymore. It was about something much bigger. Even major luxury brands took notice. Some released statements about improving customer experiences, while others launched new campaigns promoting inclusivity. And the original dealership, the one that had dismissed Barron Trump, struggled to recover. No amount of marketing could erase what had happened. But Barron wasn't done yet. A few weeks later, he revealed his final move. The car he had bought wasn't just for him. He had it fully restored, brought back to its former glory, and then, in a grand gesture, he auctioned it off. The proceeds went to charity organizations that supported inclusion, equality, and opportunities for those who had been overlooked, just as he had been that day in the dealership. At the auction, standing before a crowd, Barron spoke briefly but powerfully. This car was just an object until this story unfolded. Now it carries something far more valuable, a lesson that we all have the power to inspire change, as long as we're guided by respect. The audience erupted in applause. In the end, What had started as an act of prejudice had transformed into something else entirely, something meaningful, something lasting, because respect, after all, is the only real luxury that matters. This story is more than just a single incident inside a luxury dealership. It's a reminder of how one moment of discrimination, if handled with grace and purpose, can transform into something far greater. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring more inspiring stories.